I'm Samar Faruqi from SAP, Industry Principal for Retail and Consumer. I'd like to welcome you to these webinar highlights where we discuss the topic of best practices to grow e-commerce. We hope you find the content engaging and informative. And if you have any questions or would like to follow up with us, please connect, drop us a line. We'll be happy to put you in touch with an expert or indeed engage with you on mapping your roadmap to success. Look forward to your feedback and see you very soon. Thank you very much.
So before we get into the meat of the discussion, can you tell us exactly what our viewers and listeners can learn in the next 30 odd minutes?
Great, thank you, Kishore. So they're going to cover 6 main topics. We're going to talk about the strategic situation and what that means for retailers. We're going to look at what is the next normal and 5 stages of digital reinvention, because when we talk about retail, and commerce, we mean connecting all the stages of the retail experience with commerce to make it happen. So what does that look like and how can you win? And then we're going to look at a couple of success cases that hopefully you'll find very informative and interesting of how we're working with SAP customers to deliver these kinds of experiences and what it actually looks like. With that, we'll then look at what are some of the fast start options you have with commerce with SAP. I know classically sometimes the opinion is SAP is a huge beast and difficult to get started on. But actually, I'll show you a roadmap to success and what that looks like and how you can get started very quickly with SAP. And then we'll touch upon some of the typical challenges that you may face as executives and business leaders lining up strategy to actually embark on such a project. What are some of those challenges and how can you overcome those and take the board with you on the journey to success? And then finally, we'll touch upon what are some of the best practices, particularly from SAP Industries, to engage and make these steps happen together. And finally, we'll go through your questions. Strategic situation. So it's important first to have the context, right? What is happening in consumer and retail? What are we seeing as SAP, and how do we share our perspective with you on that? So that's what I've summarized as the strategic situation. So if you look at how the COVID-19, the crisis, has been impacting consumer industries, and retail obviously is part of the consumer space, it's very interesting to see the impact that the crisis has had, since the start of the year on various businesses. We don't need to dwell on this, but just to highlight the fact that, sitting right in the middle of this picture, and here we're looking at the valuation of major consumer industries, retail and consumer, see apparel, fashion, luxury, and so on, sitting in the middle there, as well as consumer durables, right, has taken a significant hit, in some cases up to 30% drop in valuation. But it is sitting towards the middle and is also positioned well to recover. And this is what we're really talking about today. As you look at the best practices and what you can deliver for commerce, you have to understand the starting point of the industry today and how it has been impacted by the crisis. So many apparel, fashion companies have been impacted by the crisis, of course, with a collapse in demand or the limited footfall and customers unable to reach stores and so on and so on. Obviously,
let me interrupt you over here. Since SAP has got access to a lot of data, you're working in a variety of industries. Which of these sectors do you think are adapting well to the COVID situation, and why?
No, that's a great question. So again, I think if you look at what's principally, on the right-hand side of this, so we have retail there. Retail has adapted very quickly. Because retail has had to become, in many situations, the 4th emergency service. Outside of, obviously, the police, healthcare workers, and so on, the fire brigade, the basic delivery of the well-being of citizenry in every country has been delivered through retail, but especially food retail and grocery. So these types of businesses are very well positioned to respond and take advantage of the new normal, and also have been under immense pressure to respond to big spikes in demand. So they have been, if you like, the most positively challenged to respond. And this is where we are seeing some of the rapid growth that's happening, particularly in commerce in that area. Where we're seeing other challenges, for example, in footwear, apparel, luxury, and so on, is more affected by a drop in demand, customers unable to visit stores, social distancing and other things coming into retail environments that is limiting store experience, that again is discouraging consumers to visit. So the challenge there is, how do I reach my customer? And we're going to come on to some of those topics in a bit more detail.
Okay.
So
that sounds good.
So if you look at some interesting facts here, how has particularly commerce, since that's one of our primary focuses today, how has commerce demand been impacted by the crisis? What has changed? So here I've summarized in an infographic the categories of the fastest growing products in commerce. So what has grown very, very quickly online has been those products and services to do with healthcare, home gyms, fitness, and so on, as well as fast-moving consumer goods that people need, because now increasingly they're spending more time at home, and in fact, if they're not under full-time lockdown, and higher shelf life products, FMCG products like pasta, bread, cereals, and so on, which are in huge demand. In some cases, we're seeing up to 600% increases in commerce demand for some of these products, right, which is relating to the reality that most of us are having to live with. So what has changed is on the flip side, what has declined the fastest? If you happen to be one of those businesses, or you happen to run retail that has some of these categories in it, you will well know the impact on some of your customers today. So what has been impacted most dramatically has been things like high fashion, consumer electronics, luggage, footwear, some types of swimwear, for example, makeup, and so on. Now, these categories, of course, have to do a lot with how people behave outdoors, how they're perceived. But if people aren't going to parties anymore, if people aren't dressing up to go to dinner, if they're not going on holidays, if they're not using the pool anymore, given the current situation, all of those categories are severely affected. And so the challenge remains on how you maintain demand for those categories and connect with the consumer.
That's right. You're absolutely right. Some of the sectors have really taken a hit due to the COVID situation. So it's great that you're bringing up these stats so we have more clarity on this. Great.
Right, exactly. It's a great point. And as retailers are responding, and we are past the initial stages of the crisis, of course, and now people are living with the daily reality of it, is that some of the steps you will take as a business will involve you maybe reprioritizing or remodeling some of your categories that you offer to make sure you can deliver what the customer needs. So with that in mind, if you look at how the crisis is accelerating digital, taking us faster to commerce, you may have heard, what people are talking about now is that what maybe have been a strategy for 5 years is now happening in less than 2 or even 1. A lot of that has to do with customer experience and digital, because we need to get closer to the customer much quicker. We need to have digital channels. And what this analysis is showing us, and this was prepared for us by IDC, the research organization, is if you look at this particular model, you can see here 4 primary areas. We have low impact, high maturity, high impact, high maturity, low impact, low maturity, and high impact, low maturity. What does that mean? That means that the impact on particular types of industries has accelerated based on their maturity. So if you look at the major impact, as we already talked about, you can see percentage terms on the previous slide: grocery, drug, convenience, general merchants, discount, home and garden. These have been rapidly disrupted and have had to accelerate digital very quickly to make sure they can reach their customer. So whilst there's been lower impact, let's say on the actual demand, because the demand actually has gone the other direction, it's actually spiked, they have to scale very quickly. Conversely, if you look at higher impact industries like specialty retail, that is obviously impacted by demand because customers are prioritizing what they want to buy, what they want to spend on, and they're going to put discretionary purchases on hold. So almost regardless whether you have a commerce offer or not, customers are going to be reticent in the current situation to spend money until they feel more confident. So with that, you're seeing a lot of impact on specialty retail and fashion companies and department stores, for example, who are then struggling with overstock, with out of season items. They may have had stores and warehouses actually closed for significant periods of time because of the crisis, which means that as they reopen business, they have a lot of excess inventory, aging inventory to move, but still customers who are very reticent to come into store to buy it. And they may actually put that purchase off completely.
Yes, this is actually a typical problem that retailers do face a lot.
Absolutely. So if we look at what this actually means, hopefully for many of us, we are past the stage of the initial panic buying that happened in March, April, May, that as the crisis started to accelerate in many regions. But this has left us with, for many retailers, this situation of VUCA, for want of a better phrase. We created this one: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So as a retailer, regardless of your commerce channel and your store channel, having to deal with volatility in terms of availability, supply chain disruption, certain categories becoming less available or not available at all, or greater competition between suppliers to actually get hold of that product, all of that adds up to volatility. So that means your operational environment, in terms of how you organize your business from start to finish, from the entire supply chain, from purchasing, inventory, warehouse, distribution, all the way to store, commerce, and last mile fulfillment, is impacted by a significant amount of volatility. And as retailers and as commercial operators, many of you will have experienced that, if not all of you. So what we've seen, again, has also been in the fashion business, and one of the sectors that I cover, is that those store closures and those the shutdowns have resulted in, again, significant slowdown in demand. Customers aren't buying, and if they do want to buy, they can't necessarily go, and if they do want to go, they're hesitant to go because the experience has changed, and they maybe want to stay away from some of the stores. Now, as you're aware, we have seen some aspects of revenge buying, as they call it, happening in some markets, like in China and Korea. As restrictions were lifted, customers have flocked back to some of the stores. But again, that's just could be seen as pent-up demand. But as that dissipates, and as promotions on some of these brands dissipate, will customers come back? That still remains to be seen. So from an industry perspective, and to wrap up this section, there are a few questions to consider for your specific business on how you're positioning yourself from a strategic perspective. So number one, how are you addressing the survival instincts of your business? Right? There is absolutely no doubt that disruptions have put the business under significant strain, regardless of what category that you're in. So how do you manage those survival needs inside the organization to make sure, for example, you can manage your cash flow, you can invest in the right projects to make your customer offer relevant in the current situation, and also preserve your people, your payroll, and your organization against some of the external pressures impacting it. Equally, customers themselves are increasingly adopting a discount mindset. Customers well know, and they're extremely savvy, and they all talk to social media, that, for example, if you operate a specialty store, they'll be expecting big discounts. They'll be expecting a significant attraction to come, whether it's via your commerce channel or whether in-store. Customers are increasingly going to be very, very price conscious and will be seeking those discounts, almost regardless of the type of product that you offer. All of that is impacted by digital acceleration and escalation. So how quickly can you get a product to market online to make sure you still maintain a voice with the customer, and that they are not immediately directed to one of your competitors? If they're looking for a particular brand or a particular experience, it's very easy for them to go online and look for substitutes, but you need to make sure that your brand remains relevant with the customer. So as we see these forces accelerate, we're going to see a Darwinian shakeout, for want of a better phrase. Now, this actually was put together by McKinsey. But what this means is, survival of the fittest in effect. Those organizations that have put in the right longer term plays and put in significant structures to manage this transition will survive. And those that don't, unfortunately, will not be with us within the next 24 months. It's a very tough message, but really, if you haven't done so already, with the window of opportunity to address digital is closing very, very rapidly. So you need to make sure you're in that position, take advantage of what's in front of you to position the business for the best long-term outcome. And then all of that ultimately drives the innovation imperative. So again, we talked about acceleration. What does that mean? That means that how you innovate your customer experience, your store experience, your online experience, your mobile experience, all of these experiences combined have to be innovated very, very fast. And so what you may have done over 2 years, you may need to do in 6 months, again, to make sure that your brand remains relevant. So to close the section off, what we have seen fundamentally in many, many countries across the region, across EMEA, is this transition from, if you imagine the situation last year, the sharing economy, which is now looks like a completely different era for many of us. You know, we were out together regularly with our friends and family, enjoying every possible F&B offer, traveling regularly without any major restrictions and so on, and sharing our experiences online. And so we built a whole universe of shared experiences that we were building our social media profiles around. Now, with many of those avenues close to us, we are living in an isolation economy. That means that we're often staying at home, working from home, with our families together, educating our children at home. And so what we buy, what we consume, and what we choose to do with our time and our money increasingly is focused inside the home and less outside the home. So how, as retailers and as consumer companies, we enable the economy for people becomes crucial. And almost the only way you can reach the customer on the sofa today is via digital, because people haven't put their phones down. So that becomes the crucial avenue to the market.
Interesting.
Okay, Kishore. Any observations?
What you're saying makes absolute sense, because in the last 3 or 4 months, there has been a huge difference even in not only people's shopping behavior, but in the entire thought process of people. So I think it all makes total sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. And I think absolutely, you know, from my perspective, I work across the region, across EMEA. So I cover the market from Spain, Italy, Greece, Turkey, all the way down to South Africa, you know, across North Africa to Pakistan. So each of those countries, you know, has unique culture, has a unique mix, but almost all of them have been universally impacted by this isolation economy concept. So how customers are engaging with brands, whether it's food and drug or whether it's fashion, a lot of it is now funneled through digital.
Very much.
Retail reinvention. So if you're an established retail company, you know, you have a long-term investment in your assets, in your people, your organization, your stores, etc. And you've been operating in a particular way for many, many years. The transition to digital, which you may have considered or may have been experimenting with, now has to be accelerated. So there are 5 stages to reimagining this. So I've called this reimagining a new start, because effectively we've entered a new era of commerce and a new era of capitalism, in effect. So what was previously working will no longer work in this new reality. So there are 5 things that you can do. Number 1 is about accelerating your digital initiatives, which I'll talk about. Number 2 is addressing new business models. And this is very, very important. You cannot overlook this. So when you look at commerce and deploying e-commerce as a channel, it's not just about, you know, tacking something on to your existing business and crossing your fingers and hoping that it works. And hopefully no one takes that approach anymore. It is about understanding our new business models and new opportunities that you can take advantage of, that your brand and your understanding of the customer can enable you for.
If I can interrupt you, Samar, this second point which you have discussed, um, I've come across a company which is recently trying to do that. So it's a traditional business, and they feel a little bit of digital can actually solve the problem. I think it might get them into more trouble than going the original way. So it's a Frankenstein model that they are trying to experiment with. So you have a
Yeah,
very good point.
yes, no, that's a very good point. So I'll touch upon that in a bit more detail in a moment, right? What is the best practice around that? And to complete these 5 points, we talk about number 2, our business model. Number 3, automation. Automation is increasingly important. You would have seen, no doubt, many news articles about how automation is being accelerated. You would have seen it in your day-to-day experiences about how automation from a cashless payment all the way through to frictionless checkouts and so on. All this automation is accelerating because it serves an immediate purpose in streamlining experiences and eliminating bottlenecks. So traditional processes are very rapidly being replaced and automation is coming in. And how you engage with your people, this is a very, very important factor in all of this, right? As a technology company, we recognize that your people are your greatest asset. And the way that your people adopt, respond, manage, and deliver the experiences is extremely important to deliver the final business result. So how you manage your people inside your organization is extremely important. And in fact, even more important than it ever was. And then finally, how you reimagine the store. What does it need to look like? How do you manage the touch points inside the store? And how do you get those particular experiences together that you need customers to feel confident and happy to come visit your stores once again? So to answer the question, how does a traditional company approach this challenge? There are 5 approaches or 5 stages: accelerate, new business models, automate, people, and stores. I'll briefly touch upon each. So acceleration of digital initiatives means not only commerce, but also means the entire backbone of your organization. So again, as SAP, we're taking the holistic view that, whilst commerce is one aspect of how you reach the customer, how efficiently you do that and how you organize yourself is just as important. If you're unable to rise to the challenge of connecting your business in the back office, behind the scenes, it is unlikely you're going to be efficient and be able to deliver the ultimate experience that you want in the front of house, be it in the store or online or with omni-channel. So accelerating each initiative and prioritizing that on a roadmap is absolutely essential so you can deliver upon the promise of commerce and digital interaction. Secondly, new business models means looking at options inside your business and how you connect with your supplier network to be more efficient and find new avenues to market and new revenues to potentially explore, develop, and offer something different to the customer. So being smart with your sourcing, working with your workforce, both front of house and back of house, remotely, looking at automation, 3D printing, and so on, all of these combined start to generate opportunities for new business models. So a number of customers I work with, for example, are looking at how do I, for example, explore in a positive way some of the metadata that I generate from my digital interactions with my customers. Now, traditionally, that has been obviously done and people have gathered intelligence about how customers behave online. But now, because that is almost a primary interaction channel, it becomes absolutely essential that I can do something with that information. And so with SAP products, for example, we provide that insight and analytics that you can use, for example, to look at predictive modeling of customers and managing demand ahead of the curve. And that allows you to explore new business models and find new sources of revenue. Automation, I mentioned previously, but we're going to see increasingly a whole number of experiences and number of roles in consumer be automated. There's a couple of examples here which I'm going to talk through. The 3 examples you see there, the robot in the aisle, this is an actual robot deployed by Walmart in the US that does shelf edge scanning. You may have seen this. And this robot goes up and down the aisles to manage inventory and the replenishment of shelves and stock throughout the day continuously. This automatically improves the accuracy inside the store. It frees up staff to do value-added work, particularly with customer interaction, and improves efficiency and accuracy of inventory. And all of these give a much better real-time position of what's happening in the store to make sure that you can eliminate, for example, stockouts and that customers are getting the products that they need. This has a dramatic improvement through automation on the store experience. The other aspect of automation, and the second example of a robot hand picking grapes, this is an actual example from Ocado and some other companies that have looked at how they can deploy robotics, for example, for handling fresh food. And traditionally, that's been very difficult because it's difficult to get an automated robotic hand to pick something that isn't metallic. How much pressure needs to be applied, because every organic item can be a slightly different shape. It's not like picking a can out of a box. The amount of pressure that has to be applied to something is, when humans do it, is based on the feedback we get through our skin that allows us to adjust the amount of strength and force that we use to pick up a particular object. Managing and creating software and hardware to simulate that has been a huge challenge, but is now available in the marketplace. And this now creates great opportunity for automating, for example, the picking of produce, as well as the packing and delivery of fresh food that traditionally has been highly labor intensive. And the third example is a contactless store where there's virtually no human interaction whatsoever. And I'm going to show you that in one of our customer references. So I mentioned people, and again, you know, any successful organization, whether it's before the pandemic or after, is a function of its people. So customer behavior is likely to be impacted by the pandemic and will remain so. Habits will change and shift permanently. The number of store visits customers make, more visits that they make, how they interact in store, wearing masks, gloves, hygiene, and so on will become habit and will stay that way. And even after 2, 3, 4 years after a vaccine has been deployed, those habits will most likely remain. And so being able to serve your customer in that environment, be able to manage their expectations and communicate with them is very, very important. So we're seeing some innovations, like, for example, here you see on the bottom right, empowering sales associates to sell from home. This is one of our innovations working with one of our partners, Keytree, which provides an extension to SAP that allows store associates, particularly in fashion, to be able to sell to customers at home and provide online support for merchandising, so that you can have a similar experience you might have in the store. For example, to get advice and recommendations, you can do so at home with the brand through an app over chat. And this actually is an effective way of maintaining customer intimacy and customer relationships that drives that people-to-people connection. And then finally, stores. Stores, of course, are being rapidly redesigned, and many of you have no doubt worked very, very hard in the recent past to redesign some of your store layouts for social distancing. And it's going well beyond obviously putting down social distancing markers and limiting the number of people in store. But those customer journeys themselves have to be revisited. What is the journey inside the store? How do you position certain products? How do customers trial certain products? What do they touch? What they're not allowed to touch? How do you manage footfall at particular times of day? How do you make sure customers get what they need to and get the right advice while still maintaining the relevant guidelines? So all of these are still a work in progress, and we're seeing different industries adopt different tactics and different strategies for delivering upon the store experience. And this will continue to evolve in the near future. So Kishore, back to you for any other comments.
It makes all perfect sense. We can see the robustness of the entire platform when you have broken it down. So it's giving us more insights, and one of the insights which I have got is SAP is so famous for its ERP. It tends to whenever we meet clients, they all know SAP as the ERP provider. but the Commerce Cloud is something which, and the possibilities which it has, is something which is always new information for the prospect. So I'm grateful that you have broken down all the details. It's very interesting.
A couple of example success cases. So to answer the question, I've got a great example for you that you may not be aware of that SAP has been working on with a customer in Switzerland. So this is an example of the store of the future that we've actually realized. So our client there is called Valora. Valora is a convenience food retailer in Switzerland. And we have worked with them to revolutionize a contactless shopping experience. And we've done this, we've delivered it, it's live, it's real. And if you imagine, no doubt you've heard of Amazon Go and other similar concepts where there's fully automated customer experience. We have delivered this live for this customer. So they have a concept called Avec Box, which is effectively a store in a shipping container. If you imagine, they have these stores, they can drop it off. You see the example there. This is in the main train station in Zurich, where customers can come in, they can identify themselves with an app, enter the store, buy what they need to with their app and leave the store without having to interact with anyone. The store actually isn't manned. It's fully automated. And from that point of view, you have a touchless, frictionless experience. And this is one example of how you can network all of these smart technologies together to deliver this 24/7 automated experience. So if I share with you some of the aspects of this customer journey and how it works. So this store, the way they enter it, you see the image on the left. It is locked, but the only way you can enter it is with an app. So you need to identify yourself with the app. So you download the app beforehand and register as a customer, and then you can scan the QR code on the door and identify yourself as a customer, which you see as step 2 on the journey, which unlocks the door. Once you're inside the store, you can pick items and self-scan via NFC, so using a mobile device, pick up items and effectively add them to your cart. In this particular store, they have a fresh food offer and they have personalized hot beverages. So when you enter the store, for example, you're offered your favorite type of coffee or tea or whatever that you happen to like, because the store knows you and your personal preferences. So you can order that and that will be prepared for you while you continue your shop. And also automatic fresh food can also be dispensed, such as prepared salads and meals and so on, which then you can also order at the same time. And you can receive your items prepared for you, popped out, you enjoy your coffee, you pay via a cashless, contactless method, and you leave. So all of this, all these touch points allow you to have a frictionless experience. From the operator's point of view, there is minimal customer friction points throughout all of this. The customer gets what they want 24/7 and they can leave. Now, what I would highlight from here is that this particular architecture, how this particular store has been put together, is end-to-end SAP. So every aspect of this particular customer uses SAP technology. So they use SAP C/4HANA, which is our customer relationship database, our CRM system, HANA. They use the customer data cloud, which manages the customer transactions, the customer identity, to make sure we have a full identity of the customer. All of this is under the data protection regulation rules and is managed appropriately. And we have Commerce Cloud that allows the interaction to take place through the app and allows the customer to interact with us. And then we drive that relationship with the customer through Marketing Cloud. So the Marketing Cloud allows us to orchestrate the marketing, the incentivization, the campaigns, the personalization offered to the customer, etc., through the Marketing Cloud. So all of these elements combined with the backend operation of SAP ERP operating at the backend creates an end-to-end experience for the customer. So all of this allows the customer to be able to have that frictionless experience and leverages SAP technology at every single touch point. And then what I would say about the store of the future is that if you imagine for your particular business, whether it's in fashion, whether it's in lifestyle, whether it's grocery, whichever sector you're looking at, all of these sectors, there's elements of this experience that you can leverage. So having certain entry points you can control, having a single view of the customer that you can manage every single touch point, allowing the customers to serve themselves as is appropriate based on the type of goods, being able to personalize the offer, and allowing frictionless, contactless payment, all aspects of the store of the future that you can engage. All of that orchestrated with the marketing cloud to make sure you can manage the messaging. So we're actually working with a number of customers today that actually deliver these experiences, and Valora is one referenceable example. And you can go on YouTube, for example, you can see various videos customers have posted of their experience in a Valora store. One other example I'd like to share. Yep.
Sorry, Samar. I thought I've got a couple more questions. So just in the interest of time, I want to just pick one for you and we can continue. There's a request for talking about some of the case studies in our region where you've seen companies adapt quickly to change the scenarios of offering to their customers due to the pandemic. So if you can pick some points on that, that'll be great.
Great. Yeah, so that is my next slide. So let's take the example of our well-known customer, Majid Al Futtaim and Carrefour. So MAF, and no doubt almost all of us are customers of MAF at some point or another, and if you're a customer of Carrefour. Carrefour in the region operated by MAF, based out of Dubai, runs SAP Commerce Cloud and Marketing Cloud. So they already are an existing SAP customer. And so how have Carrefour responded to the pandemic, the crisis, and the experience? So there's one particular aspect I want to share with you. Obviously, firstly, it's well known that Carrefour has had to respond to, over 300% increase in commerce demand since the start of the pandemic. Huge spike in demand, which actually required them to very quickly respond in how they structure their back office, how they manage fulfillment, supply chain, and delivery. So they responded very quickly, and having the SAP architecture in place allowed them to focus on making sure they could orchestrate the back end very quickly to organize themselves to scale up. That was point one. Point two, and I've highlighted here in these screenshots, is that if you go to Majid Al Futtaim's Carrefour website, you will see on the top banner something called mall stores. Mall stores, I'm not sure if you can see my arrow there, but on the top banner, all categories, deals, bulk savings, and mall stores. Mall stores is a concept introduced on our Commerce Cloud platform that allows customers to shop multiple brands outside of the traditional Carrefour online store. So all of the umbrella brands that Majid Al Futtaim operates, or partner brands, they are starting to offer those online through Carrefour. So as you build your Carrefour shopping cart and add tomatoes, beans, and nappies, in my case, to my cart, I can flick over to the mall store and also add any of these products from GNC, for example, or Mobile Outfitters, or Borders. Close to the time, so I'll try and go through this quickly. So, traditionally, you might imagine SAP is, only for large businesses. That's not true. Let me share with you our roadmap, our pathway for commerce success. So you see here illustrated on this graph is we have, firstly, we have upscale commerce. Upscale commerce is our, for want of a better phrase, Shopify option. 3 weeks to deploy rapidly, which allows you to get your brand online. And then secondly, as your brand matures and reaches sufficient complexity, you can move on to Commerce Cloud. And with Commerce Cloud, that gives you the full-scale commerce capability that allows you then to reach into CX. We have all these touch points, and finally you get into the omni-channel range where you have the full connected experience, connected journeys, in-store, digital experience, mobility, real-time customer intelligence, and so on. So all of these combined via starting your journey with upscale gives you the capability to deliver. So upscale, and you may not have heard of this product, upscale allows you to start very small, very agile, and very, very quick. So Upscale is an SAP product released in the last couple of years that's come into its own very recently, that has allowed customers to very, very quickly ramp up, less than 3 weeks. So you're talking about something quite different than Commerce Cloud. It is a smaller, agile app, mobile first, designed to get your product out there online very, very quickly through built-in accelerators with a mobile first concept. So this is how we accelerate commerce. So you can start with Upscale, then as your business gets to a certain size, a certain number of SKUs, certain number of complexity you want to move, Commerce Cloud becomes a better proposition for you. Commerce Cloud is the ultimate SAP solution for commerce, and we have dozens and dozens of global retailers operating on Commerce Cloud. But where you need to start sometimes may be from Upscale. So we're starting small, and typically this works very well, for example, if you are a specialty retailer or FMCG looking to go direct to consumer. If you have overstock, if you have particular items you want to move quickly, you need to set up a website and put it in the hands of your customers very quickly. Upscale is the right option to get started.
Samar, we got a few more questions, and probably we might be able to cover one. So for everybody else, we'll respond back to you individually if a question is not answered. One question that I'm picking is quite popular. When do you start seeing return on investment if you're gonna put your money in new e-commerce platforms? And again, this coming from people who probably run traditional businesses.
So that's a great question. So what we would work with you on, if you work with us end to end, for example, you're looking at Commerce Cloud, is to put together a business case, a value case. As part of that, we would model with you similar sized businesses in your speciality, looking at what is the potential benefit you would develop from deploying commerce and what the payback would be. So there are both qualitative and quantitative benefits. And we as an industry team specifically sit down and work with customers to define what business value looks like. So business value is generated by not only from obviously transactional value based on what you are transacting online, but also from cost savings and efficiencies that can be generated, as well as saving lost sales, as well as improving customer interaction, for example, in store. So all of these value drivers we calculate with you based on specifics for your business. And so we have a whole set of benchmarks and tools that we leverage that allows us to work with you to show you what the benchmark benefit could potentially be. And more than happy, if you're interested, to engage with you on that, for example, to do a fast benchmark exercise that would help model what the potential benefit would be.
There are some questions around costs and comparisons with competitors. So what we will do is we'll reach out to you on an individual basis, just in the interest of time. And a cost topic is always a very long topic, right? Because you want to see value more than what is the cost. So we'll reach out to you guys on one-to-one to discuss these things. I think we're almost on top of the hour, Samar. So maybe some final words before we finish the session.
Okay, great. So I'll just wrap up, guys, and thank you for your kind attention. And just touch on the cost topic. Yes, absolutely. Every cost discussion is unique for every customer. And so that's based on a number of factors. We're happy to discuss that with you. Just to emphasize, the upscale commerce option is the entry level. It's the simplest, lowest cost option available, but that is designed for a limited number of products you're going to put online and designed as a fast start. But absolutely, we have all types of businesses and all types of scale of businesses, from small, medium, and large, operating the full platform. So finally, two particular points I just want to wrap up on is aligning your executive, very important. So I touched upon the business case and why that's relevant. So as you, as decision makers, as key stakeholders in your organization, you have to convince the board to come along with you, the CEO, the managing director, the head of retail. Many of these key stakeholders will need to be convinced. And so as SAP, we can help you with that by generating those value cases that I described, doing the benchmark analysis for your particular industry, looking at what the potential value could look like, and mapping those all the way through so you can see what ultimately dollars and cents are generated by this investment. So all of that is extremely important in aligning your executives, as much as feature, function, and technology platform are an important discussion. Understanding business value and aligning executives is crucial, and we can help you achieve that. So just in time to touch upon those best practices, this is exactly how we make it happen. We engage from end to end. So as I started, retail and commerce is not about any of these particular functions in isolation. It is about making sure that you integrate every stage of that journey together. You have connected experience. So best practices means mapping that journey from the very beginning, understanding the thought process of your customer, using design thinking to model those journeys, identify touch points, and then determine what is the best practice that I would want to engage with the customer at that particular point. How do I drive that transaction? How do I drive that interaction? What data do I collect? And how does that drive the customer behavior appropriately? So having that model up front, and we spend a lot of time with our customers developing these, gives clarity to the organization, also puts the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, the Chief Experience Officer, and others in a key lead role to determine what the brand looks and feels like online. And this is extremely important. All our brands generate feelings, and those feelings result in a purchasing, buying, or modeling behavior of a customer in terms of what they feel about your brand and they feel comfortable buying from you or not. So we take all of that into account, and then we connect that to the target architecture. What capabilities do you need in the product to drive certain advantages? And are there certain innovations or capabilities unique to your brand that you want to introduce that are maybe delivered from a partner? There may be things like augmented reality. There may be things like touchless payment channels you want to leverage. All of those we can integrate and design, co-innovate with you to deliver the best possible experience. So with that, I will conclude and say thank you very much for your kind attention. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Any questions, issues, feel free to reach out to us. My email address is here. You can scan the QR code if you want and connect with me on LinkedIn. And so with that, I will hand back to Kishore.
Thank you, Samar. It was really insightful. And thank you, Sunil, for coordinating all of this. It was a really insightful webinar. And over 540 people had registered. Not all of them could make it, but my team will now start emailing the recordings to everyone who has registered. And of course, anyone having any questions or doubts can either connect with Samar or connect with Sunil or connect with me on LinkedIn and send